Welcome to Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives, part of the Full Monty Leadership Interview Series. I'm your host, Dov Barron, founder of Full Monty Leadership. If you are a new listener or a new viewer, thank you for joining us. Strap yourself in. We're about to go full Monty. If you're a regular, a big thank you to you for being one of the over 1.5 million downloads that we've had and for making us the number one podcast for Fortune 500 listeners, for human resources, family, business, next generation leadership, and a whole bunch of other categories. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. And remember, we always need you to help us stay relevant. So please go to iTunes, rate, review, and subscribe to the show. It really helps. Now let me ask you, do you have some very important things to do? You just never get to do them? You ever wondered why? Well, we're going to look at that in this show. Once again, we're here with a special guest. My guest today is Chris Cooper, not the actor. This guy's a bigger celebrity, but we'll get to that in a minute, than Chris Cooper. Chris helps leaders, teams to elevate their performance in their business as people through consulting, through masterclasses, through coaching, interviews, speaking, broadcasting. He has hosted the business elevation radio show, Be More, Achieve More, on Voice America for 4 years. It's accessed monthly from over 50 countries, which has given him unusual access to high achievers leading the business and self-development best practices. And I will be honored to be a guest on that show December the 18th, 2015. So look out for that one. Chris speaks at events about engagement starts with you and why engagement is so important, but it's actually up to you. He speaks on the power to get things done, whether you feel like it or not, which is the title of his latest book, and we're going to talk about that too on this show. He has 25 plus years of multiple functions in business, tons of experience at the board level, including 7 years working for the Mars Corporation, and that's not Mars as in the planet, but Mars as in the bar. Chris also is a former regional president for the Professional Speaking Association, and I'm going to tell you more about how you can get a hold of Chris, where he is, and all those things. But first, let's put our hands together and welcome Chris Cooper. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Dov. Great to speak to you.
Great to have you here, mate. We're really happy to have you on the show.
Thank you.
So, getting things done, the power to get things done, whether you feel like it or not. I mean, I'm a busy guy. I know for sure my listeners are and viewers are. I know yours are. There's always that massive list. There's always like 59 things to do, and I'm going to get 42 of them done today, and then I end up getting 3 done, and that list now gets longer. And sometimes I've got this long list and I've got an hour, but sod it, I'm tired. I just needed to put my feet up and have a cup of tea and hang out, maybe watch the telly or something, turn on a show and tell us why you think when we've got these things to do, why we don't do them and how we can do them even if we don't feel like it.
Well, that's a really big question. I think we all struggle a little bit with, well, most people struggle with getting the things that they need to do done. And I suppose there's kind of a distinction here, Dov, in that, there are some things that are really important that we get done, and then there's lots of other things that we like doing. And I think what we tend to do as human beings, we often focus on the squeakiest wheels, on the on those things that are, require immediate attention.
Right.
What we often fail to do is to get the really, really important things done that are essential, particularly if we're maybe running a business or running a team or a department. We sometimes forget to get around to those. And I think there's a number of reasons for that. I think sometimes it's a bit of lack of discipline, because I think, I certainly know myself, I have quite a bit of laziness in me. I'd rather sometimes put my feet up or go and watch, the tennis on the TV or a bit of a cricket game or something that's going on. So there's a bit of a lack of discipline. I think there's also a lack of focus sometimes. We don't know what's in. We don't spend the time to get really clear about what's really important. Mm-hmm. I think there's also sometimes some tasks, depending upon our personality type, that are completely out of our flow.
Right.
So might be getting a new website developed, or it might be making another 20 sales calls.
Right.
There are things that really put us out of our comfort zone. And for me, I know once upon a time you were free climbing on cliffs and rock. That to me would be out of my comfort zone. So I think the other final thing I'd just like to say, and maybe we can talk in a minute about some of the ways to overcome this, is that particularly with, I think, people who maybe come out of the corporate sphere, and they maybe go and set up their own business, what they often do is they're very excited because they've got so much freedom.
Right.
And if you're in a corporate setting, you've got line managers, maybe board meetings, perhaps you've got appraisals, you've got all this infrastructure that's holding you to account.
Yeah.
But you go and set up your own business, and suddenly there's just you, maybe, before you can afford maybe someone to do your administration for you.
Right.
And therefore, there's a lot of tasks maybe which aren't in your comfort zone that someone used to do perhaps for you, that you've now got to do yourself and get done. Otherwise, the business is not successful. So, I think there's a lot of reasons, and some of it is down to focus. Some of it comes down to our natural flow and style and the situation we find ourselves in.
So I agree with you. I think there's categories of reasons, as you said. Discipline / focus. Everything's screaming for attention. If you're in your own business, you're entrepreneurial, or even in a small business, you're likely wearing multiple hats, and you've got to juggle between the hats and between what is important. But I'm more coming to this piece around feeling like it. Like, yeah, I'm good at this. I just don't feel like it. Or yeah, I really do like this. I really like doing this. I just don't feel like it. Or this is miserable. I don't want to do it. So I certainly don't feel like it. How would you suggest, because that's right part of the title of your book, how do you suggest we get past that what can feel like a massive weight of not feeling like it? Because not feeling like it is the ultimate bullshit justification that we buy wholeheartedly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what we often do is we rely on motivation. We rely on our own willpower, and we'll say, I'm going to do that. I will do that. And then we don't do it. And I think what we have to do, and what all our research has suggested, is to get things done. What we have to do is we have to put in place manual strategies that overlay that natural desire to go and do something else that's a bit more enjoyable. What we'll do is we'll move ourselves towards things that are more pleasurable. And things, even if we want to do them because we know it's important, there's still pain to get over that hurdle and make ourselves do it. Right. So what we do, and the whole essence of the book, is that we spoke to many people, and obviously, like yourself and your amazing show, is I've interviewed hundreds of people now, and I find the really successful ones have managed to overcome that. But what they do is they put in place strategies that mean they have to act whether they feel like it or not.
Right.
So they're not just relying on motivation. They're not just relying on the willpower. They've actually got to do it. So they're programming themselves that way. And there's a number of different strategies to help you do that.
Talk to us about some of those strategies that take us beyond the because I think I've been in business all my working life, so I would be definitely considered entrepreneur. Definitely considered self-starter, but I'm also and people go, you have great discipline, you have great willpower, and I always go, I don't really. It's just, I know that's what it looks like. I just have other mechanisms. So give us some ideas of what people can use instead of willpower, because I think, here's the thing, Chris, and you tell me what you think. I think that we're all gonna one day. I don't know what the gonna is, but we're all gonna one day, particularly if you're like me and you're a creative person and you think a lot of good. I mean, I've got 25 new ideas every freaking day, and every one of them is going to need action. And so I've got 100 books in my head, literally 100 books in my head to write. How do I pick which one is to do? I mean, all that stuff is too much. So how do you give us an idea of how to get people past the idea, even in the moment of being inspired, and I'm going to go do this. And then there's, as you well know, there's that fade off, because now I'm going to do this because I'm inspired. Now is the action to do it. That's a whole different bag of tricks. Give us a specific tip somebody can do to get them over that hump that goes from the inspiration to the actionable.
Absolutely. A great question. So very first thing I would say to people, spend some time to get really clear on your intentions. Because what happens is we go away on that amazing motivational course, or we've listened to Dov Barron, or we've listened to Chris Cooper, and we're coming away thinking, yeah, I'm going to do that. But we don't actually get it done. What we need to do is get really clear. What are the 5 or 6 things this year that we must achieve that are absolutely essential to us? Not the 100 things, right, but the 5 or 6 key things. Right. So it might be that new website. It might be that you need to develop a collaborator. It might be whatever it is for you. Get really clear on what those are. And then the first kind of category of kind of tips to enable and strategies to enable you to get them done is really to put a spotlight on those. And what I mean by a spotlight, and what you do and what works for you may not work for me. So right, the things that you can do in terms of spotlighting, you can ensure that those intentions are maybe up on a whiteboard on your wall, so you see them each day. Mm-hmm. You might put them onto, what I do is I carry a set of cards around, which I look at in the morning, and I look at at lunchtime, I look at the end of the day. And on those cards are some of my intentions, or the key things that I'm going to do this year. So I'm programming my mind that those things are important and more important than others. Other things you can do.
Say those again, because I think that's an important one. Because a lot of people they drift out of their mind. You know what I mean? It's there and then it's gone. So that's a very simple, practical one. Tell us that one again with the cards. And walk us through how to do it is what I'm saying.
Yeah, sure. So with the cards, identify your 6 intentions, or whatever's really important to you. And it might be that one of them, say, if it's your small business, it could be a turnover figure that's important.
What I'm trying to get to, Chris, is because I want to make sure that the viewer, listener gets this. Am I writing down a goal, or am I writing along the outcome of a goal, which is the intention? And it's just my language, and I want to make sure that our listeners really getting where you're coming from.
Personally, myself, I would write down the intention, and I would write down what will be different when you get there.
Right. So if the goal is another 100 grand a year, or another 10 million a year, or whatever it is, it's why and how will life be different, or will business be different as a result of that goal, as well as the goal. Is that correct?
Well, I think if you did that, then that would add extra power to the willpower. So what you want to do is you want to stack in not as much onto the desirability to achieve that, such that you are just so energized to go ahead and achieve it. And one of my friends, a lady who I've interviewed on my radio show, she says she gets up in the morning, she's got firecrackers in her. She just wants to get out and achieve her goals, but she's programming herself continuously and reminding herself is what's important. And I think people, it's the same with other people, and I was talking to a vice president of Ritz-Carlton recently, and she was saying, with them, at 10 minutes past 9 every morning, they have a huddle, every single department in their organization, and they're reminding themselves of the vision and the purpose and why they're actually here. And they're looking at how, as a team, they can actually fulfill the expectations of customers coming in that the customers didn't even know they had. And the premise of that is you don't need to tell people, we just all need to be reminded. So keep reminding yourself of what's important. And if that's writing it on a card for you, that's great. If that's putting it on a whiteboard, here's another little one here. This is called a Daruma doll.
Okay, what's that?
It's a Japanese doll, and a friend of mine, Stuart Pickles, brought me this back from Japan. I asked him, I think you can buy them online, actually. And if you've got something that's so important in terms of an achievement for the future, and you're very clear about what that is, it might be unrealistic to you at this point in time, you colour in the eye, and you're not allowed to colour in the other eye until you've achieved it. And that sits on your desk and reminds you of that objective.
Very cool.
My friend who I wrote the book, Dr. Stephen Levinson, he's got a little device called a motivator. And what you can do is get that to buzz at intervals to remind you of maybe, a sales goal or something like that.
What's that
and that's
called
a
again?
Constant. It's called the motivator.
Is that an app?
It's actually a physical little device, and you set it so that it might be every hour. if you've got in your mind, yeah, I'm going to make 20 new sales calls this week, and every hour it's buzzing, and it's, oh yes, I need to make 20 new sales calls. Oh yeah, I need to make 20. I need to make 20 more sales calls.
Pay attention.
Yeah, it is.
Come on back.
It is, yeah. So it's just reminding you. It's putting that into your mind. So I think there are lots of things. You might put things on your phone that pop up. Put them on your iPad when you open, on your computer screen.
Yeah.
Anything to remind you of what's really important. So that's the first.
So the key element here is the strategy is to do whatever it is that works for you. That's the strategy. Yes. But the message, the important thing is that the strategy doesn't matter if you haven't worked out what is really important to you. That's the key, is like, what is important to you? And I would say, and why? Are we on the same page here?
Yes, absolutely.
Right. So
absolutely.
What is important to you and why is it important to you? I would go further. Again, I might be jumping ahead of you because it's probably already in your book, but I would look at both the positive and negative consequences. So if I don't do it, what's the negative consequences? If I do it, what's the positive consequences? And like getting that's rock solid, and then develop a strategy that works for you. Because maybe you're a more digital person and it goes on your phone. Maybe you're a more physical person and you're more old school and it goes in a card. Whatever it works for you, tattoo it on the back of your eyelids, whatever it is. But you get that clear. Is that it?
Absolutely, you got to get really, really clear, and then you put the spotlight on it such that you can't wiggle out of it. So, spotlight could be telling lots of people. So, one strategy people have used to stop smoking has been to send a little card to 20 people and say, "I'm a non-smoker. I've stopped smoking." Yeah. And they've got 20 people then holding them to account. And they know now, crikey, it's not just about me.
But you see, you just said something that I think is important. Again, is missed. You said it before, but you've really sort of hit it there. When you've worked for someone, there's usually somebody holding you accountable. Even if you're the CEO, it's the board. If you're the CFO, it's the CEO. If you're the manager, it's the people above you. There's always somebody holding you accountable too. And the problem with going out in the world on your own, as you said, is this wonderful idea of freedom, which means you can be a lazy ass and not really do anything and keep yourself busy. And why I often say to people is, are you in business? Are you in busyness? Because it's easy to fool yourself. And believe me, I know it's easy to fool yourself that you're actually in business when you're in busyness, because there's nobody holding you accountable. And I've said this for years. I've got clients I've been working with one-on-one, a mentor. I've been working one-on-one with them for more than 10 years. And I was sitting one day with a client, and they pay me a decent sum to work with me for an hour and a half. And I'm sitting with them, we're about 25 minutes into the session. I said, maybe a little bit longer actually. I said, you do realize we've spent this whole time talking about movies, right? And he said, yep. And I said, I'm kind of an expensive person to sit and talk movies with. And he goes, worth every penny. And I go, really? Because I don't know what you got out of this. I mean, I can philosophically think, but metaphorically think, but I don't know. Tell me why. He says, I'll tell you why. He says, the fact that I know I'm coming here every week, the fact that I know we're having this conversation every week, he goes, in the middle of the week when I start sliding away from the conversation, I remember, oh shit, I got to sit down with Dov next Wednesday. And he goes, and that pulls me back on track. He goes, yes. And we can spend we could spend everything but the last 5 minutes. And if you just say, what did you do about this? What did you do about, he says, he says, I know I can't live with myself going, I really didn't do that. And he goes, and that level of accountability, he said, in truth, I'd be willing to pay you for 5 minutes your full fee, because it's that keeps me running all week. And I don't think we have that when we go out in the world, when we're our own, quote, boss.
Absolutely. And I'm completely with you. One of the important strategies, I'd like to talk about in a minute about creating situations that mean you've got to act. But one of those situations can be having an accountability partner. I literally, when I started studying this, and this whole subject came out of the fact that I'd had what I felt was a very successful career, went to board level. Then I set up a business with partners, and we were turning over in 3 years a consultancy, £2.5 million. So what's that? $3.5 million. Yep. Not bad for a small business. But then I went out on my own, and I was 2 years in, thinking I could change the world. Yet I was struggling, and I was beating myself up. But what I wasn't doing was, I realized I wasn't doing the things that were important to get a really successful business done. I was just doing the things I like to do.
Right.
And when I put in place, and I was holding a lot of people to account, and I still do. When I took on a mentor, I say a mentor loosely. What I do with mine is I've had coaches for years, and I coach, and I think that's authentic when you coach others. What I said to him is, I want you to do this. I'm going to write you a board report, and I'm going to send it to you every month. And I want you to sit down. I want you to review. We'll do it over Skype. I want you to review that report with me every month. And if I haven't done what I said I'm going to do, I want you to kick my butt and give me a hard time.
Yep.
And that's what I do with him. And the fact that I know every month I'm going to be talking to Doug, and if I've not done what I said I'm going to do, I'm going to get my butt kicked.
Right.
And the worst thing is, I know when I go in that I haven't done it, so I'm going to be kicking my own butt as well.
Yeah, exactly.
That has literally trebled my turnover in the last 2.5 years. So my turnover has trebled through having that kind of accountability support. So that, I think that is really important. Of course, when we had that, most of us, when we worked in corporates, but on our own we don't. So I think you've got to build following through mechanisms to make sure you get things done.
But again, coming back to that piece, again, it's an important piece. Having an accountability partner. And I want to nudge people on this one, because I think that you go, oh, well, I'll get my mate to help me. Your mate is not going to be your accountability partner. And I'll tell you why. Because your mate will buy your bullshit excuses. Yeah. That's why.
Yes.
That's why it can't be your mate. It's got to be somebody who go, you know what? You said you're going to do this. Why didn't you do it? Well, the cat died, the dog farted, whatever it is. No, that's not good enough. You said you were going to. Are you integral or not? And your mate's going to go, well, I know we were out that night before and you had a bit of a hangover. I get it. It's okay. You'll get it next month. That's not accountability. That's actually that's leveraging your excuses. So I think it's really important. That's why people have people like me and David to work with, like Chris to work with, is to say, I need, like you got Doug or whoever it is, I need somebody who will hold my feet to the fire. And the other thing about that is, if you're a strong personality, not that I know anybody like that myself when I shave in the morning, but if you're a strong personality, you need somebody who can be as strong as you around that accountability and stronger, who can say, listen, I'm not here to be your mate. I'm not here for you. I'm here to hold you accountable. That's what you are paying me for. And as I said before, it's worth every penny, because as you just pointed out, Chris, your business tripled because of that. Because somebody could hold you accountable. So whatever you pay Doug, whatever that is, I'm making up a figure here, right? Just no insult to anybody, but let's say you're paying him 50 grand a year, right? You pay him 50 grand a year. If your business has tripled, and now you're making 150,000 a year, it was well worth the investment. That's a 3-to-1. Come on, that's like, get with the program. But if you go, I can't afford it, and I always say, you can't afford not to. Are we on the same path, mate?
It's absolutely essential. And I think, if I think back to my call, I had a call with Doug this morning, and I've actually, this month has been a good month in terms of the fact that I've built a number of really interesting collaborative partnerships this month, which are going to lead to all sorts of opportunities. And I've done all sorts of my radio show. I'm booked with guests until April. Lots of things have kind of happened and moved forward. But Doug's saying, yes, but Chris, how many sales have you closed this month?
Ooh, I hate that question.
Chris, can we just have a look at your diary? Which days have you, because you've got all this great stuff going on and you're doing this speech. But Chris, where's your sales? How many days are you spending next week? Which day are you going to spend next week, by the way? Closing sales, Chris. I don't mean talking networking with people. I mean, so that is absolutely essential, I think, to have that accountability. I actually, with my work, I hold people. I have two accountability mechanisms. I not only hold people I work with one-to-one accountable, I also invite them to a group call each month where the group holds them accountable as well.
Awesome.
So it's really important,
Wow.
really important.
So one of your main strategies is, well, just going back, A, find out what's important to you, truly important, why it's important, negative, positive consequences of that. Then set up a strategy, whatever it is, some system for accountability. I went further in saying that can't be a mate. That has to be somebody
No,
who's
can't be your
actually,
mum or dad. It's got to be somebody. It can't be family either.
no, God forbid it's
No,
your family.
dependent.
Right? Somebody who can actually will hold you to it and will ask you the hard questions like, how many sales did you make? Like, I hate
Yeah,
that
and I think
question, but that's
yeah,
like that's the question I have to be asked.
and I also think, Dov, and I know you can do this. I think people like you and I who can actually say, not only do all of that, but we've actually got an amazing Rolodex as well, which we can connect people and actually help them, fulfill more opportunities through the network. And because we've been around long enough, we can give them some wisdom and pointers.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's who I look for with somebody who's where I want to be or heading to where I want to be. I think that's important.
Yeah, and again, that's another piece on that on the mentorship of the accountability. Is this person where you want to be? Meaning, and people ask me oftentimes, you're a mentor. What's the difference between that and a coach? And I said, really, a coach is to help you access what is a resource within you. So they're doing that. A mentor is somebody who creates a vision for you that is far bigger than anything you've previously imagined, holds you accountable to it, but has actually passed over the landmines you're about to pass over and can actually guide you around them. And therefore will kick your ass, will teach you, will guide you, and will pull the resources. So it's a bigger piece.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. So important.
When does the book come out?
Yeah, the book comes out this is the book. It comes out in January. It's available in the US. It's published by Perigee Books, which is Penguin Random House. It's also available in audio. I think it's going to be in Japan and all sorts of things. So very excited about it.
And this is your third, is that right?
No. I've written some sort of PDFs and various little things, but this is my first published book. So
published, okay.
Yeah, so it's the first published book. So
because one of the things I'm going to tie this and see where you go for it. Subject you and I have in common, of course, is engagement, right?
Yes.
What does it take to be engaged, and how do you engage people, etc., etc. But for me, I find it very interesting because it ties to this subject that we're speaking about, and here's how it ties for me. One of the things that I state constantly to people is that we've got this Gallup number that says 70+% of people are disengaged. Okay, whether that's true or not, I'm not at liberty to say. I don't have the wherewithal to say that. But if it's true, we tend to look at that as our employees. And we are left out of the equation as the leader, as the manager or the leader. We're left out of that equation. And I would put it to people that leaders are at least as disengaged as the employee. And that's the challenge. And oftentimes, that's because we are not decided what's important. We've not got that same system we're just talking about. Are you? Does this make?
I'm so with you, and something I talk about is about. I say engagement starts with you, because there's so many leaders out there thinking we've got to engage everybody else, and what they're realizing, they're not turning up to work clear about the purpose, vision, and strategy of the business. I also find really engaging leaders actually know I can ask them, and they can tell me their own purpose in life. They can tell me their own vision, and they understand their own values. They're also like you. I don't know what you do, Dov, but really engaged leaders, they actually get themselves engaged before they get into work. They're
Absolutely.
visualizing, they're exercising, they are reminding themselves of what's important. They might be reading great books. They might be imagining the day going really well. But by the time they hit the office, they're motivated. And then what they've then got is a team of people who are probably not engaged that they've got to work on. So they've got to develop strategies to engage those people. such that they go out and perform, and being more interested in them than they are in trying to be interested themselves,
Right.
getting curious about things. And then once you've got your teams is engaged and fired up and they're clear what they're doing, you've also got to overcome the hurdle, which is the book, which is to actually get them to act on the right things. And then the book comes into play because, it's great doing all of this stuff and being engaging. But if you ain't getting anything done and you're not getting the right things done, you're not going to get the results.
Right. So, and that's what I'm saying. I think this is important. I think that a leader has got to pick up this book. Because, the way we talked about it at the beginning, somebody might be listening and go, well, I'm not an entrepreneur. I don't need this. Hold on. You're a leader. You need this. You need to understand that you've got to engage you. This is the thing that everybody forgets. It's not about engaging others. You've got to engage yourself. Then you've got to get your people to engage themselves in the purpose, vision, mission, of all the things that it takes to do your company. So this, to me, fits for a leader very, very, very well. And I'm going to say this, and this is not blowing smoke up anybody's skirt. I think you've got to get this book. You got to apply this to yourself, but you then got to put it in the hands of your people. You got to get enough copies and put it in the hands of your people and go, okay. So when I'm giving you something to do, you need to set this up. You got to decide what's important in your workflow for the week. You got to decide what you got to get done and what are your strategies for accountability. And let's set up an accountability system inside the organization. That's what I do with the companies I work with. It's like, okay, who's your accountability partner? How are they going to, and then you say, how are you going to hold them accountable? And they go, well, was that going to work for you? Not really. Okay, well, that's not going to be any good, is it? Right? So I think that this is a piece for everybody to get. This is a great book for entrepreneurs, for solopreneurs, absolutely. Okay. But it's also a vitally important leadership book and for leaders to pass on. So there's a congruence of a message right through.
So I got a lovely email which I wasn't expecting from the a vice president in the publisher who'd read the book and was tendering it out for the audio production. And he said, "It's I've got so many ideas out of this. It's so important. This all my team are getting a copy."
There you go.
So that was lovely to get. But could I just share with you something that I think the accountability is important, getting clear. But there's something which I think is fundamental to the book, which I see so many people. They don't know they're doing it, but what they're doing is they're creating situations that mean that they have to act. So there's no wiggling out of it.
Okay.
They've got to act. Could I give you just one or two examples of that?
Please, we'd love that.
I think it's really important. Now, it could be time bound. So it could be that you've got to set up a presentation where you're gonna share the next stage of the project. Time. I'm just laughing. I'm going to show you this. It might make you laugh. This is a Mars rover, believe it or not. And my 5-year-old son has got to get his homework in tomorrow. And about an hour before he went to bed, we realized he had to do his homework. And he created this with his mum in an hour. Now, for a 5-year-old, and he did most of it himself because he's quite creative. But it's amazing what you can achieve in an hour if you're absolutely focused. So, I think it's important to create situations. So let me give you some examples. So through our research, one particular guy wanted to make more sales calls. So what he did is here's some two £10 notes. What he actually did is he gave 5 $10 bills to his PA. And he said he wanted to make 5 calls a day, cold calls a day, which he hated the idea of doing. It scared the life out of him. And what he said to his assistant was, at the end of the day, what I want you to do is we'll sit down and we'll see what calls I've made. And for any that I haven't made, I want you to put a $10 bill through the shredder.
Ooh.
In front of me.
Ooh.
So, and he soon realized that for every call he made, he was actually making $10 or saving $10 by making them. So it started to change his habit. Another lovely example was one of my friends wanted to, she's a twice world champion rower from Denmark. Her name's Meta Block. She wanted to add more comedy into her speaking. Mm-hmm. So what Meta did was this. I don't know, what would you do, Dov, if you wanted to add a bit more comedy or humor into your speaking, do you think?
I'd do 2 things. One is I would go and watch or read people who are comedic. First of all, to discover what makes me laugh, because if I try to do comedy that's not mine, that won't work. And
Yep.
the second thing I would do is I would look for my biggest mistakes and that I can now look back and find funny.
Excellent. So that's a great strategy, and that would actually be similar strategy to myself. I might go on a stand-up comedy course.
Yep.
This is what Meta did. She booked a 1,435-seat concert hall in Tivoli Gardens in Copenhagen. She managed to sell out every single ticket, and then she had 5 months to learn how to do a 90-minute one-woman comedy show, which she did. She sold it out, and she did that. She sang with the gospel choir, and she had to learn how to be a stand-up comic in that time. And then that's now added more humor into her speaking. I mean, that's
certainly giving her a damn good story. All the speakers need great stories, and that is a blinder.
It's so, I think that's a brilliant example. A friend of mine, Billy Schwer, he's a world champion boxer. Billy became a world champion boxer. He failed on 3 occasions, but in the 4th occasion, he succeeded. And mentally, what he had to do is he had to say to himself, if I don't train, I'm going to get killed. So in his mind, that became such a reason to actually perform and up his game that he went out and succeeded. So I think we can do that. We can set up situations that mean that we've got to act. My radio show and yours, I have full respect for you, Dov, with your show, because your show requires you to keep the energy to keep these shows going. What I've done with mine is I lock myself into a contract where I've got to produce one every week.
Right.
And that means I've done 184 hours in 4 years. But without that, I couldn't act. But it's given me more freedom. So find situations, create situations, even if they're false, that leverage. And the final message on that, if you don't mind me sharing this last one, because it means a lot to me, is if you can't think of a reason, think of your own mortality. So on this picture here, can you see that?
Yep.
There's a young man in the middle there who's called Stephen Sutton. And Stephen was 19 years old and had found out he got terminal cancer. He may have been mentioned in Canada. He certainly was in the United States, because before he died, he raised £6 million for Teenage Cancer Trust.
Wow.
And Stephen said to me, because I got to know him quite well, and I interviewed him only 3 days before he put what he thought was his last post on Facebook. And Stephen said things to me like, Chris, my cancer has given me so little time, but I have so much motivation. But I look around in the world and there's so many people out there with so little motivation, but so much time. Make every day count.
Yeah.
And I find, if I can't think of another reason, I can't think of a compelling situation, if this thing's important, I just reflect on my own mortality. And I think about how can I make this day useful? Because my purpose in life is about helping people realize their potential. And if I'm not doing that, I'm not on track. So I just think of Stephen and I think of that, and it usually gets me over the line.
Yeah, it's amazing. I use many of those techniques myself. And I was out in my garden in the summer, and I was thinking about, like I said, I've got 100 books in my head ready to be written. I've got lots of stuff to do, and very often feel like I don't have enough time to do things. But one of the things that was happening, I was thinking about this particular project I wanted to do, and I was realizing that I'd been putting it off. And I that morning I'd read something, and I thought, oh, that's interesting, and it kind of drifted out of my mind. I'm in my garden, and I'm pruning and doing things, and suddenly I go, oh my God, that's 15 years. And what I'd read about that morning was how old the average guy is when he's dead, when he dies. Now, I know I'm not an average guy. I'm in good shape. I eat right. I do all the things that keep me alive and vital. But I've got, according to that, 15 years. And I went, okay. So if I've only got 15 years, and in truth, I could have 15 minutes because I get by a bus, right? But if I've only got 15 years, how pissed off am I going to be if I'm dead going, oh my God, I didn't write that book. Oh my God, I didn't do that project. I didn't change that life. I didn't make that difference. And for me, that's like, and it's just my own strategy. It's not recommending it for anybody else. It might be what works for you, is this mortality piece, which is how pissed off will I be with myself if I didn't do that thing? And for
Yes.
me, I think that what stops us, I know it's what stopped me for years, is this idea that I'm playing big enough. And the mistake of that is to look around. Here's the big mistake. You look around at others and you go, I'm playing a bigger game than they are. So freaking what? Are you playing a game that's as big as you can play? And the answer is, I don't care how big you're playing. The answer is no. So what are you going to do? And that's around the importance piece. I think it's vital.
I think that's great. And I think, if you think of those 15 years, if you just worked out how many days a year am I actually going to work, so then and you times that by the 15, and you've got a number there. I'm not can't do it in my head, but you could put that on your board. You could knock a day off every day if you wanted to, and then that's going to make those days count. And you also, I'm completely with you. Is that actually we're so lucky. Paul Stephen he made his last year count. I mean, that guy had a bucket list. He ended up speaking at the Royal Albert Hall and all sorts of in a year because he wanted to make that last year count, but he had so little time. We're all sitting here with lots of time. To him, he'd have loved to have had 15 years. He'd love to have had another 3 years, but he made every single day count. So we're doing a disservice to the world if we're not, and to ourselves, if we're not using that time wisely.
Absolutely. So let me ask you a quick final question before you tell people how to find out more about you, and that is this. One of the things that I believe, and I speak about this from the platform and with clients, is we've all got this ability to see things in others we don't see in ourselves, and we're all a little bit blind about some of our own, not only foibles, but also our own genius. I call those the invisible factors. What do you see as the invisible factors? So meaning that these people don't even know they do it. Like they probably aren't aware until it was pointed out. What do you see are the invisible factors that allow the successful to get shit done? And what is the invisible factors that people don't pay attention to that stops them from getting things done?
Well, that's a big question. The invisible factors, but I think the invisible factor are some of those things we talked about earlier in terms of they don't see that if they go into doing their own business, they've got freedom as an issue, because actually with freedom, like you've got 101 different book ideas, then we go and get excited and try and do all these things when we can't manage them. So, I mean, what I would say to you on that situation is, out of all of those ideas, you've got which ones will add the most value to the world, and make those maybe your priorities. I think also another invisible factor, and it's one I was chatting with David. I don't know if you've ever heard of David Newman, but I was chatting with David earlier, and about sense of urgency, about I think it's good to be relaxed and enjoy your time and whatever, but actually, sometimes we need to build a sense of urgency into what we do, and even if we've got to trick ourselves into it being important. I think that in the invisible factor of realizing, and I think this is where the book's a little bit different, and people have said there's a unique territory here in that actually to get things done we have to, there's a manual, it's not an automatic process. You just leave it to being automatic, then you'll always do what you've always done, and you'll always get what you've always got.
Absolutely.
But what we've got to do is we've got to interrupt that automatic behavior which might take us towards not doing it, and we've got to put a strategy, a manual strategy in place that means we will act. And I think people who are really good at this, what they do is they look at each of their intentions and they put a strategy in place that is so powerful that they just can't get out of it. And the only way forward is to get it done. And they might be squirming and they might be uncomfortable, but as you know, Dov, there'll be people listening to us today and thinking, gosh, that Dov, he's an amazing guy, and he's doing all the, how's he got the bottle to do these shows? But it was a point in time where you probably sat, if you were anything like me, and thought about it for about 3 months and thought, can't possibly do that. What will people think? But then you go out and do it, and actually, it's not that difficult. Right. And then you do a few of them, and it's just natural. It's into your automatic. And it's the same with speaking on a big stage, or it takes some discipline to get there. It takes accountability. And I think the final point I'd make about it is sometimes there's a skill that we might need further down the line. So, for example, for you, and I, we in our visions in the future, one day we probably could see ourselves standing on a big stage in front of a lot of people. What I would say to people is that there'll be a point in time where the opportunity comes to you. So you might as well start now, making sure you're really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's an important intention for you, make it an important intention, put in accountability, and build that skill for when that situation arises, because you don't want to be stood in front of 1,000 people with your trousers round your ankles.
or with a big wet patch in the front of them. So Chris, tell our viewers, our listeners, where they can find out more about you, about what it is you offer, and how to get in touch with you, whatever it is.
Yeah, sure. So my website is chriscooper.co.uk. So that's very simple. There's information there about my radio show, which you can also go to voiceamerica.com and Google, put Chris Cooper in there. You will also find all the shows and the archives.
You'll also find the celebrity Chris Cooper. So make sure you get the right Chris Cooper, because it's Chris Cooper in the UK. Because we were talking about this before we went on air. There's a famous actor who was in American Beauty. He was the crazy neighbor next door. His name is Chris Cooper. Fabulous actor. Mission Impossible, etc., etc. Not the same one. However, he's almost as famous as this Chris Cooper, the one you're watching right now. Because tell that story. We got to add that in just for a bit of juice on the end.
No, it was. I was just telling you before the interview. Somebody, a chief executive, contacted me after listening to my radio show, and he listened to a show that I did called "Engagement Starts With You," where one of my guests couldn't turn up because sadly his mum had just died, and I thought, well, I'll do it myself. So I just shared, my keynote really, and he came to me and said he was really impressed with it. Started listening to the show. Could we meet? So we met, and one of the things that there's lots of opportunities with this great organisation, and one of the things he said to me was, we've got this panel, and it's going to be linked with Parliament. We've got these amazing people. There's someone just sold his business for £60 million on it. There's this person and that person. And we decided it'd be really great to have a celebrity as part of the panel. And I said, oh, great. I said, who have you got in mind? And he said, we're thinking about you. And
you went,
completely floored
which Chris Cooper are you looking for?
Completely floored me. And,
isn't that great?
But that's the power, isn't it, of being prepared to put yourself out there and being prepared to take a stand. You and I, we both want to add value to people beyond our clients. Taking the time to write a book, and what you then do is you have a point of difference, and the fact lots of people. Some of that light starts to shine back on you, whether you realize it or not.
Well, but I think that comment from that CEO, and that you're the celebrity. I think that is your point made manifest, because you were saying just before that, you've got to prepare yourself for when that big thing comes. Because if it comes and you're not prepared, then you're standing around with your pants around your ankles or a wet patch, and everything you've done has led to that. And the challenge with that is that because and this is not Chris or me, this is for every one of us, is the steps can seem minuscule in this 1,000-mile journey. But if you stop taking them, you stop. But each minuscule step gets you closer. And sometimes it feels very uncomfortable and very raw, and the terrain is difficult. And then you go, oh shit, look at that. I learned that way back there. And as a result, I'm a celebrity now, figuratively speaking. But as a result, now I have this opportunity. And I think it's your point made manifest. It's very important. So you can't afford to stay with what's comfortable or easy. As we all know, whatever life you want exists outside of your comfort zone.
I think the enemy is your comfort. Being in your comfort zone can be the enemy of success. I think.
Absolutely.
You've got to keep taking yourself out and detox, as you say, those small things. There's a chapter in the book about that in terms of detoxifying tasks. Because when I was 28, I was on a self-development course, and for the first time in my life, I actually sat down. I was broke. I was living in a flat in London. I just bought, so I was broke. My girlfriend had ditched me. I was at a real low point, and for the first time in my life, I took a piece of paper and I decided to write down what life would be like when I was 40. And I chose 40 because at 28, you can't ever imagine being that old.
40. Oh my God, that's so old.
I just wrote these crazy things down about having a wonderful, to me, a wonderful wife and children, a beautiful home, and being financially free, having my own business. And I remember smiling at myself and almost laughing because it was so far away from where I was. But on the 40th birthday, I stood up at that beautiful house, exactly how I'd imagined it, with my wife, with my first child, I'd actually got a dog in there, who arrived 2 weeks later. I was playing my guitar because I imagined playing an amazing guitar and being able to entertain everybody. And I could not believe it. Those things that happened, but they happen slowly. Take it in small steps.
Absolutely.
As I think it's Tony Robbins said, which one quote I like from him is, people significantly overestimate what they can achieve in a year, but significantly underestimate what they can achieve in 10.
Yeah, absolutely. Fully agree. Well, it's been great having you on. I'm just we're gonna sign out, but I hope you'll stay with us just to the end, and I'll come back to you and say goodbye. I want to really thank you for being here with us. It's been a great show. You added a ton of value, of course. And for you, dear listener, viewer, I know I encourage you, as always, to, if this was on in the background, go back, listen to it again, take some notes, pay attention. There's enormous amounts of value here for you if you will really listen. But you got to do that. I know we live in a distracted world. And if you are truly serious about embracing the kind of positive disruption that builds a culture that has fiercely loyal employees who not only lead, but become evangelical about your organization while generating 10 times engagement and productivity, reach out to me, Dov Baron, through fullmontyleadership.com. That's fullmontyleadership.com. I want to thank you for joining us here on Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives, part of the Full Monty Leadership interview series with our great guest today, Chris Cooper. Again, you can find out more about Chris. Remember I said it's www.chriscooper.co.uk. That's where you can find out more about him. Thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. Remember, we always need your help in staying relevant, so please go to iTunes, rate, review, and subscribe to the show. And until next time, stay curious, my friends. Stay curious.